This is TWiT.
All right, let's talk about Medium a little bit, because it's not completely clear what's going on there. But this morning I woke up to news that and this is, I think you can safely say this is anti-union sentiment from Ev Williams, the founder of Medium, that they've decided not to continue with their own in-house journalistic endeavors. They have quite a few. 10 Debugger. You've written for Debugger. I know Jason's written for 10. Megan Maroney is an editor at 10.
10.
All the people who work for 10 were offered buyouts. And the impression I got from the internal email was that those publications were just going to go away, and that those people who currently worked for those publications would be allowed to continue on as editors for people like Jeff, contributors to Medium, but not for in-house publications.
Don't you edit my posts. Don't you touch them.
Team, writes Ev, we are making some changes to our editorial strategy and leadership and giving a voluntary exit option to employees who would like to take different paths. Jeff, what does this mean? Some people are saying we have to point out that there was a unionization effort in Medium that failed by a very close vote.
By one vote.
And that all of the people who just got pink slips in effect were very strong advocates of that kind of unionization. So, but
the union did fail, and so it wasn't there. So
but it could
wasn't
be.
a case of firing people who. No, I saw a labor lawyer say, no, this is perfectly within his rights. And he wasn't firing people for organizing. The vote went through. The vote failed. He's not firing people. He's saying, I'm giving you buyouts if you want. Here they are.
Yeah, and he isn't firing people. It's just a buyout.
That's a proper. I think it's more likely Ev is the pivot meister. He has pivoted this sucker a number of times because Ev's trying to find a model, and he still, frankly, hasn't found it yet, right? So he started off.
Journalism's expensive.
Well, it's not even just journalism. You can be writing anything you want. It's a blog platform. It's a platisher, as that horrible word made.
But what these things were like 10, these were really like journalistic entities.
They were good journalistic efforts. They were very good. But he's trying to make a business. He started trying to do a new kind of advertising. He gave up on advertising entirely. He's rejected advertising entirely. So everything we talked about before, hey, get rid of advertising. Okay, Ev did it. So Ev says to people, pay, was it $5 a month? And Leo Laporte growled about that. And then he splits it up against all the parties. And the more audience he gets to pay, the kind of better he is. But was the investment in those efforts worth it or not? Then the other part that people are talking about is this may be a very Substack reaction, that past publications is the what did you call it? Not the solitary writer, the sovereign writer.
Sovereign writer, yeah.
Right. That's where I'm not going to say the future is. That's ridiculous. But at least the current fad is the individuals, and that's where they have the money and opportunity. I don't really know.
He's offering. I mean, he's generous. He's offering a lump sum payment of 5 months' salary, 6 months of health benefits.
Healthcare is the big one too.
Yeah, so that's generous. Yeah. It's certainly time to find another job. He says, "What about our pubs? Honestly, I think it will take a lot more experimentation to find out what their role is on the platform." So it doesn't sound like he's shutting them down. He does say we need to experiment more efficiently than we have been to date. I can see more focused, high-affinity publications working well as part of the Medium bundle.
Yeah, the way I've always said, Ev has changed the world twice, right? He started Blogger, which was the first major kind of retail blogging platform, by no means the first. And
UPS guys here, Stacey.
What could they be bringing? And I think that was really important. It brought me into blogging. It changed my view of media and my career in life. And then Twitter, of course, co-founder of Twitter, which changed the world again. And my joke is that Ev is paying penance by trying to start Medium, where people write at length without the time crush. But he's trying to make this work. He just hasn't hit the right formula yet. But he could have given up a couple of years ago.
He says this means identifying writers. You're right. This sounds like a Substack play. This means identifying writers both already on Medium or not, and offering them deals, support, editing, and feedback to help them tell great stories and find their audiences. So instead of focusing on publication, focusing on the bylines, the individuals. That sounds sensible. That's acknowledging that we live in a Substack world where people pay money for a particular person's work as opposed to a publication's work. Is that, Stacey, you kind of have gone through this transition. Do you think that that's really the future of journalism, of writing?
Okay, this almost prompted me to drink last night. I was so sad about everybody I know.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know what the future is for journalists. I know that not everybody can do what I do because I have a niche that is enterprisey, right? And if I only did the smart home stuff, I couldn't do what I do. So I don't know what the future is.
I wonder if and maybe Jeff, you can comment too, but I wonder if being a journalist going forward means not getting the skills, the chops, and then working your way up through a different publications till you get, the New York Times job or the Wall Street Journal job, and you're an employee your whole life, to more like, and this kind of seems like the world's working a little more like this, being working on your brand and working your brand up.
I think it's more entrepreneurial than trying to work for that dream job.
But as you point out, as Stacey points out, not everybody is entrepreneurial, except maybe that's now. I mean, that's what they call your department, is the School of Entrepreneurial Journalism, right?
Well, yeah, but we've changed that view, right? And I think Ant's right, but I had to change my view of entrepreneurship. I know you're an employee or you're a freelancer was the world we had. Then on the other end, it's entrepreneurial. I'm going to start a new company. I'm going to start Vox. Well, that's really hard. Even if I'm going to start
not it either.
A local blog.
It's the sovereign. Hard. It's the sovereign.
This is right. So what we're doing now is we changed our entrepreneurial program completely. Used to be a certificate and a degree. Now it's 100-day only online, which pre-COVID we planned it that way. Run by Jeremy Kaplan, and you learn how to do your own thing using the platforms that exist, using Medium and Substack and YouTube and Patreon. And you directly serve a market or community. And that's the key, I think. It could be a podcast. It could be book contracts, too. It could be speaking gigs, lots of different things.
If you're Danielle Steele, let's say, or some massively successful novelist, should you just publish your own novels and hope that you can find an audience?
I don't think we're there yet. No, I don't think you're there. In fact, at the end of Gutenberg, the Gutenberg parenthesis, which is the book I'm hoping somebody will actually respond to me about. I recant my view about books. I said in what would Google do that books should be updatable and linkable and clickable and searchable, and I say I was wrong. I think books took a long time to get to be what a book is, and there's value in it.
Well, but also more than that, and Stacey, I think you'd agree. The skill of a writer is writing, not business. The skill of a journalist like you, Stacey, is digging, finding the story, doing the research, and writing the story. Why should you also have these unrelated skills of I can start a business and I can market myself and I can build a brand? Those are all unrelated skills. Do we have to have all the skills in one now?
I wonder if the future economy, you need to have that like you have the ability to pay your bills personally, right? Like everybody has to, you may not be great at it, but you have to do it. So like some entrepreneurial, so even more important, I would say, than coding is an understanding of the basics of how to build a business in terms of like, how to create an LLC for yourself, how to invoice people, how to run basic accounts. And because I think, even if you're like a Fiverr or a DoorDash delivery person, you have to like track your own expenses. You have to manage your own, 10 whatevers. And I think those are skills that they suck. They're no fun.
But you got to do it. It's part of life. So yeah, you have to pay your taxes. Nobody wants to be.
You can hire an accountant, but at some point in time, so I feel like you may, as journalists, we're going to have to build that into the curriculum, not just as journalists. I think this is going to be going forward.
I used to argue for this in high school when I was a trustee at the high school. I used to argue that the new way of work was going to be gig working and you know, and that you really needed to develop entrepreneurial is not the right thing, but an independent mindset. And what's interesting is how people like Ev are saying, well, we can, or Jack Conte at Patreon, we can create the backbone that will facilitate this so you don't have to do it all. But what you are responsible for is creating your brand, your persona. I guess you always, I think Danielle,
and your relationship with your public,
your relationship with your audience. And Danielle Steele had to do that. You know, the publisher provided her with an editor and a printing press and distribution and a bookstore, but she still had to do all the hard work of creating Danielle Steele.
So last week we talked a little bit about Facebook trying to serve these folks, and I heard some more sense about this. And interestingly, because my presumption was, okay, it'll all be in the Facebook walled garden. They want to help people start their own websites independently on their own.
Wow.
And then use Facebook in ways that are beneficial.
As promotional material.
Yeah. And I think the other benefit of Facebook too, that I wish media companies would get their heads around, is community, obviously. Right?
Yeah.
That you can have a place where you can talk with people and can ask you questions.
And I've always said that's what TWiT was.
Community is about king, community. Man. Yeah. Community is king. It's about, like, I believe you said this last week, of having, not saying having 100,000 subscribers, but having that 1,000 really loyal super.
Kevin Kelly's 1,000 fans. Yeah. Well, Ant, you do this. I mean, every photographer photographers have been on the leading edge of this, because you haven't been able to make a living working for a newspaper or magazine in some years. So if you're a photographer, you've been on your own, at least in the last 10, 15 years, you've been on your own. And every photographer I know has a variety of skills and variety of things they do to support themselves.
Seems like every photographer I know is a former IT person on some
You're
level.
Right. Trey Ratcliffe, you're right. You're right. Chris Marquardt, you're right.
So I don't think I've ever asked you, Ant, what did you want to be when you grew
up? One of the things, I used to want to be a scientist, because I
too late
watching cartoons.
Too late.
And, no.
There's no beaker in your future.
No. Chemistry made me want to retire from the science world.
But seriously, do you see yourself as a podcaster, or as a writer, as a photographer? I think maybe even those labels don't apply anymore, do they?
I see myself, as my bio says, a digital content creator.
Yeah, that's probably
I
good.
am never going to sit here and say that I am just solely a photographer, because I can do more than just click the shutter. You know, I can also do retouching and finishing of photos, even though I didn't take the photograph. I can also edit video. I can write a little bit, you know, so I'm a digital content creator, because I didn't want to lock myself in and be out of work.
So, and Stacey, you had to do that. You had to figure out what you brought to the table, what your skills were, and what people would support you doing, right?
Sort of, yes. Yes.
Or did you just say, here's what I want to do? And that's what I did, by the way. I didn't think about it. I just said, here's what I want to do. I hope it works.
I mean, there was a little bit more planning, but yes, I did kind of just say, it was less, here's what I want to do, but also just, here's what I can do.
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's very realistic. That's practical. Yeah. You can't buy a chateau and become a 24-hour-a-day YouTuber.
Right. I would die. Like, that is like my nightmare you're describing.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, to actually share your life.